If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to another live stream episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. Really appreciate you listening. One of tonight's two guests is probably one of the youngest guests we've ever had on the show. He's 13 years old, but kids have encounters with dogmen too. That goes without saying. And so that you know, both he and his mother, who's also joining us tonight, they both want to remain anonymous. So with that in mind, I'm just going to call them Kay and Jack. Let's bring them in here now. Kay and Jack, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Vic. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Well, it's great having you here. We appreciate your time. Please give us a brief bio on yourself, Jack, and then after you do that, then I'll have Kay do the same.
Well, I'm originally from southeastern Michigan, around the Detroit area. I have always grown up hearing stories of dogmen, but I'm 13 years old and I'm in middle school and I'm living a good life right now.
Well, that's great. Can't ask for any more than that. How about you, Kay?
So yes, I've grown up and lived in Michigan my whole life, except for 6 months of my life. I've shortly lived in South Carolina. So I have two children, a 13 and 5, both boys. And I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Take your time.
But yeah, I have two different child's fathers. Jack's dad lives in North Dakota, which is where our story is going to lead us and our journey in leading to that way. And I've been all over the eastern side of the United States, but during this journey that the story is going to lead us to, this was the first time I've actually gone west in the United States. So it's going to lead us to our story.
I'm glad you're able to make it out west. Yeah, somebody who lives out east, I've been all over and I get jealous sometimes because the West has so much to offer as far as sights. And if you love the outdoors, there seems to me like there's so much more to do. But yeah, I mean, some people out west feel the opposite. So I guess it just depends how you are when it comes to that. Jack, before you and your dad had your first encounter together, the two of you used to listen to the show. How long had you two been listening?
Well, we probably began listening back in, I'd say, late 2019 or late 2018 or early 2019. Yeah, around that time.
Wow, you were young then.
Yes.
Yeah, you were really young back then. Did he introduce you to the show or did you introduce it to him?
Well, my dad had always heard of Bigfoot and he was looking up like cryptids with his brother one day and he came across your show and he showed it to me, and ever since then we'd fallen in love and listened to it every time I was with him.
Wow, I'm glad you found out about it for more reasons than one, because obviously you two went on to have more than one encounter with one of these things. So thank goodness you knew about it. Kay, did you know that your son at that young of an age was listening to a show like this, like Dogman Encounters?
That's interesting that you asked that. So yes, as much as I may have discouraged it at a young age, he's actually always had a curiosity toward I don't want to say like the supernatural, but like definitely toward Bigfoot. And I didn't really know that Dogman existed actually until his encounter happened. Like I really didn't honestly consider those things to be real. And obviously now that I know that his encounter happened, like I truly am a believer and I've looked into it more. But I always knew that he kind of had an interest in like Bigfoot, and he was kind of interested in like the outdoors perspective of things. But yeah, I just kind of thought that it was, I guess you can say that I wasn't really a believer up until this really experience happened. I am definitely, like, without a doubt, I know 100% that this is absolutely the truth, and there's no denying their existence. And yeah, I can say that I actually am new to learning about all of these experiences, and I'm trying to help him deal with this experience through everything, because just going through something like this, I mean, anybody having to experience anything like this, it can be terrifying. And you just, I guess you just do it day by day.
Yeah, that's all you can do. And of course, he's so lucky to have you. And the fact that you're so supportive, that's huge. That means so much. It really does. One thing I'm wondering about, though, Jack, is if you and your dad used to listen to the show for all that time, why didn't you or your dad contact me right after you had that first encounter together?
Well, at the time, I went to visit my father, who was living in North Dakota. But when it happened, I was only visiting him for about a month there because I hadn't seen him in around 2 years. So after the encounter occurred, I kind of was focusing on spending time with him. I was planning on making a report, but I didn't know if I had to be a certain age. So we were planning on waiting until excuse me. We were planning on waiting until I had gone back to Michigan, and I was gonna wait maybe until I was a little older. But since then, I decided I wanted to.
Well, that's understandable. And it still blows my mind. There's so many little kids who listen to the show. Dogman Encounters is not for kids. It never has been, never will be. But at the same time, I do try to keep it in mind that so many little kids, and I mean small, listen to the show week in, week out with their parents like a ritual. So, considering what we're talking about here, there's only so much you can do as far as precautions would go. And I can only go to certain extremes to try to make it so it's not too harsh on them. But yeah, there are kids who are younger than you were when you started listening that listen regularly. It just blows my mind. It really does. Did your dad ever seem to have any concerns about you listening to some of the more frightening episodes of the show?
Well, he kind of mostly listened to them with me, but I think he made sure that I sticked on like the more friendlier side at the time when he listened. But when I listened to him alone, I don't think he really knew that I kind of listened by myself sometimes. But yeah, he made sure that I stayed on the more positive side.
Huh, that's funny. You listening alone. I'll bet you he knew. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised.
Listen to every single one of them.
I won't go
Just
there.
don't tell your mom. That's what he would say.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right, Jack, please tell us about your encounters now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Well, the initial events that took place prior to the encounter, me and my family were planning on going on a road trip from Michigan all the way to North Dakota to visit my dad for the month of July. And the encounter took place it was the night of the 14th, and um sorry, I'm trying to think. It was the night of the 14th the encounter happened, and then it kind of led into August. But the events, we had drove from Michigan, all the way up from the Mackinac Bridge across, and when we hit a deer along the way, which was frightening. And after that, we drove into Wisconsin, Minnesota, and we reached North Dakota. And for the first day we were there, it was the 4th of July when we arrived, which is actually a year today, ironically. After that, we kind of lit off fireworks the night I saw my dad, and we rested after a long trip. And I caught up with him and I learned the place where he was staying. What did
The landscape.
the landscape? Yeah.
Describe what it's set up like.
The town the event took place was a very small town. It has around a population of 75 people, but most of the houses there are abandoned, and around are a lot of grass plains and lakes everywhere. It is the most beautiful state I've ever seen in my entire life. I'd love to visit it again. Um, After the first night, we settled in, and my mom and my grandmother stayed for a couple hours into the morning, but they parted ways and drove back, and I planned the month that I was going to stay with my father. So, what should I say next? Okay.
About the day that it happened. What
Oh.
led up to it? What you were doing?
The days went by out there. I was enjoying the summer with my dad, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He took me shooting. He bought me my own, 22 caliber one shot rifle. He bought me that, so we went shooting up there. Enjoyed that, and then we had a very close relationship to the neighbors next to our house out there. So the night of the encounter, it was the 14th. Me and my father were walking home around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night from the neighbor's house, and there's this clearing between the bushes where we could walk through, and our driveway had led right next to it. We began walking, and we were going home, and we were going to go lie down since it was very late out there. And we began hearing what I can only describe as cats, like howling, not as like an aggressive way, but if they were being like attacked or being ripped open or being eaten alive. And that may sound a little graphic, but that's what it sounded like. And after we heard that, my dad pulled out his hunting knife. He had a pouch on, and I kind of stayed behind him, and we started to approach where the sounds were coming from. And there was this old, I want to say it was abandoned, this shack that was overgrown, and there was a street light next to it that was shining over. It barely worked, but just illuminated enough of the street to where you could see into the brush a little bit. And this I will remember for the rest of my life. A figure I want to estimate about 7 foot tall, dark, very dark. It had pointy ears. It was on its hind legs. It was standing on two legs. Ran out from behind the shack across this little dirt road and into the other brush. It moved, I estimate, at speeds about I can't even imagine. It was faster than I've ever seen. Yeah. So after I saw that, I was frozen with fear, and I could smell a lingering odor. It was very foul. Kind of reminded me of a skunk, but worse. Was kind of frozen in place, and I looked at my dad, but when the creature, which I believe now obviously is a dogman, when it ran, my father was looking at me, so he didn't actually see it run across the road. But after that happened, I froze for about around, I guess, 6 seconds. I kind of turned towards my house, my grandfather's house, which we had been staying in, and I ran towards the front door, but I didn't want to leave my dad outside. So I was kind of peeking out the door, asking him, "What do you see? What do you see?" And he responded to me. He said, I quote, "It's hopping towards me. It looks like it is a kangaroo." And he wasn't describing its appearance. He was describing it was hopping at him towards a kangaroo, but it was kind of behind the brush, so he couldn't see it that well, but he could tell it was hopping. After that, he told me to go upstairs, so I went upstairs. I was very frightful. Um, I was worried that he was gonna get eaten or something. I was worried about my dad. But he said that he went inside and brought my little gun out and walked around for about probably like 3 minutes, and he didn't see it anymore. So it most likely darted away once it saw him come back out. And the night ended. Um, Fast forward a couple days after the encounter happened. Um, yeah, so I was, after that had taken place, I had been very fearful. And I did not want to go alone out at night for that reason, but in particular, there were also coyotes and snakes and all other things out there that I was worried, but mostly the encounter had shaken me up a lot. And my dad was at the neighbors next door the second night we encountered it, and I was leaving my grandpa's house. I was shaking. It was dark already, probably around 9:50, 10 o'clock. I was walking to the neighbor's house to go get my dad because I wanted him to come back to my grandpa's house. So as I began walking, I didn't want to turn around because I had a weird feeling, and as that feeling began to set in, I began hearing the cats howling again, and the um the cats, the town is a very small town, so there's lots of stray cats in the area, and the yeah, so there's lots of stray cats. I'd seen a couple well before the encounter happened, kind of prowling around the town, and I knew those were the stray cats that were being most likely attacked. So I began ran after I heard the cats being attacked. I began running towards the neighbor's house, and I started to tear up because I believed the creature could have been right behind me for all I knew. So I started running towards the neighbor's house, and um I heard kind of I heard a loud door opening, and it was my dad and the neighbor peeking out, seeing what I was kind of crying about, and he heard the cats, and he immediately knew what it was. So he told me, "Get in the house now." And my dad ran over to where the sound was coming from, and I was scared, and the neighbor was comforting me. We can call her Miss A for her initial. So Miss A was comforting me, and I was calming down, and I was peeking out the window, and I'd slided the window open just to where I could call out to my dad. And it was a very kind, I want to say, foggy night. That night, it was kind of foggy. It was dark out. It was very quiet. Um, and I called to my dad, and I asked him, "What do you see?" And he told me, "Call your grandfather and tell him to get his get his gun." So I did that, and this next part I personally didn't witness, but this is what my dad described to me. Um, so who, he said he described that when he went over to the brush, he had and before I describe this, he had this little shack which was his workshop back there. So he ran towards the brush, towards the shack, kinda. Um, and apparently he said, he saw next to this telephone pole this very tall set of eyes that were glowing, and I believe that he said they were red eyes, like kind of amber orange reddish eyes. Um and the he also said he saw the very sharp teeth that were being reflected from the light was reflecting on them from the telephone or the light pole. And the eyes he saw, he said they were close to a telephone pole, so that he used for reference. And he said that he estimated it was probably around 6 to 8 feet off the ground. And he told me that he had frozen with fear. He was terrified. And after the encounter took place, and so he yelled at me, and I called my grandfather on my cell phone. He fetched his gun, and apparently they went out and looked for it. And I don't know my dad was hesitant to tell me what happened afterwards.
So, if I may pipe in here, so like I spoke to his dad, and he told me that he called me actually in the middle of the night, like terrified in this situation. And I've never heard such fear come out of his voice before, but he was absolutely terrified. And he told me that when him and his father went to go out to investigate, that not only did they find actual, like, they couldn't actually find it when they were looking for it. It was like they could not see it anywhere, but they actually found several ripped apart carcasses of some animals like that they couldn't really identify, but I would assume that they were probably the cats. And he also said that they found some prints in the mud that were absolutely huge for any. He said it was not a coyote print, it was not a wolf print, it wasn't any sort of print that he's been able to identify, but they looked everywhere. But I mean, the fear in his voice was absolutely true. And it scared me because my son was with him, and I felt a little helpless because I'm halfway across the country at this point, and he was actually scared. And I've never heard him show fear to me before. And without any doubt, like it wasn't a joke. They weren't, he called me in the middle of the night to tell me that he was scared, and that scared me a little bit because I'm like, well, is my child safe with you? Like, is this gonna come back? Like, did you find it? And so it was just a little terrifying and a little unsettling, and not to mention, to find some, leftover body parts of something that was eaten is just a little unsettling, to say the least. So
Yeah, after that had happened, I was not gonna walk back, even if I was with my dad. Yeah, I trusted him, but I was scared, so I spent the night at the neighbor's house that night. And the next morning, I woke up and I was scared, but my dad kind of calmed me down in the morning. And about afternoon that day, we went out there where he had seen the eyes and all that. And we began looking around, and I had actually seen like these prints. I thought from a glimpse that they might have been like coyote or wolf, but they were very large, and they were kind of like, I wouldn't say they were perfect. Like, they were older than probably the night before, but they were strange. So I photographed them on my phone. Um, and also the fear my dad showed. Recircling back to that. I'd known my dad my whole life, and I had never seen him scared at all. So the fact that that he had shown fear scared me that night, because I could tell he was shaken up when he got back after they were looking around for the creature. But I knew that I would be safe if he was in the house with me, either way, because I trusted him. I trusted him with anything. But we looked around the afternoon. We didn't find anything other than some prints, and kind of some cat, what I believe are cats. They were so mangled. They were small. I want to say they were about the size of cats, but they were mangled remains from, I assume, cats, but that was a little disturbing, so we left that area alone and we walked back to my grandpa's house. After that night, the encounters kind of died down, but they picked back up a little bit shortly after. Um, the remainder of the month that I was there, I left North Dakota on July 25th. And I came back to Michigan. But the after I left, it kind of died down. But my father, I had been keeping a good contact with him, and he one night he had sent me a video of the stars from where his shack was. He was having a bonfire, and I believed in the video he sent me. His phone was not the best quality, but it looked like a figure was outlined where I initially had seen it the first night when it ran across. It looked like a figure on two legs, but I wasn't 100% sure. So I didn't exactly put it off as nothing. I sent him a screenshot, my dad, while he was out there. And shortly after I sent him that screenshot, he began sending me voice recordings. Like he said, and I quote, "There's something walking around the barn right now," and he apologized for the background noise or fireworks, but he told me he had seen or was heard like branches snapping, and
He said he had like an unsettling fear like come over him. Like sometimes he said he would be walking and like, you have to understand the landscape of where this was. Like it's desolate. There's nothing. It's plains. And there's like a town with just a couple houses, and there's like nothing in between. It's very, 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 remote. And so he told me like he would always, he had a dirt bike. He would always be out and about, like going out and about. But like he said that there was a couple times that he would just be walking or, on his dirt bike and so forth. And he just felt like something was like strong. He got the sense that something was strongly watching him. And he said like a couple times, like I got goosebumps, like the hairs on the back of my neck rose, and I just knew. He said it just was a very unsettling feeling. And going back to the odor, like he said, like I knew a couple times that there was something without a doubt. Like I thought that like I couldn't even move. I was frozen in fear. He said a couple times, like, and I knew that there was something watching me from the woods. He said like I couldn't see it. I looked, but I knew it. He said, I just had that feeling. The hairs on the back of my neck rose. And he said, and then a couple times that he said he just, the smell, he would get this, like, it was like almost like rotting flesh or rotting meat. Like it would just, or a wet dog. And he's like, and at that point, he would tell me that he would just immediately, go back to his house and so forth. But there was definitely a presence there that I know that was very unsettling to the people there. I'm not exactly sure because I'm not from that town in that area about how many other people in that area had experiences. But I absolutely know that he had one, and even so, it affected my son when he came back to Michigan. I can say that, like even now, he doesn't realize that it affected him as much as it did. But I can say from being his mom, like, we have a separated garage from our house and so forth. And I will tell him, hey, go get an extension cord or go get this out of the garage. And he'll be like, I don't want to go outside right now. Like, and I know that it's from that fear from that because he never had that fear before. And so that's a little bit hard to deal with. Like that's something that we're working on, and all you can do is just, try to be supportive, like how, speaking with, you and hearing about other people's experiences on your show, Vic, has actually helped tremendously because, you're not alone in it. You know that in some people just straight up dismiss you in these situations, but I can sit here and attest, I am a 33-year-old woman that has 2 children, and I can attest that this happened to him, and it's a little to know that they're out there and they're real, and just you never know when you're going to come across it. Like I grew up actually in Michigan, where I guess now I've learned that a lot of encounters have actually happened in my area, but I mean, I grew up going on the boat, in the woods, boating, camping, doing all the things that you can do. And, I, as a child, never came across something like this before. I mean, I may have had a couple of like strange experiences in my life, but I can't say that I've actually experienced seeing something or experiencing it personally. But I know that my son did, and that's something that I try to help him deal with every single day. And it's hard because, I mean, even though, he is here, he hasn't been hurt. He's walking and he's alive. But, how would you feel when a 7-foot creature with sharp teeth on hind legs is standing in front of you that's not supposed to exist? And it's just, I guess, like, what do you do? Where do you go from here? How do you deal with that? So that's where we're at right now, and that's what we're trying to do is, a year later, here we are. We're finally talking about it. It took us a year to come out and share our experience or his experience about what happened, and it's been a little bit of a ride, but that's just, I guess, talking about it and taking it day by day helps us deal with it. And I want to help him be able to heal from this so that, as he grows and gets older, he can go camping and, do things without being in fear of, coming across one of these creatures again. Want to add anything?
Yeah. Getting back to the night, it was probably midnight or 1 a.m. I was up having texting with my dad, and he was sending me voice recordings of things he was hearing, and it's kind of hard to make out because he was kind of not really like focusing on talking, and the audio is very difficult to hear. But yeah, for what he sent me, I could hear like branches snapping. Not the best, but when he was sending it to me, I was kind of out of it since it was around midnight, 1 a.m. But after that, I hadn't really heard anything else about that, and that was kind of one of the last times that I had heard any strange activity out there. I don't know if I had mentioned this yet, but unfortunately, my father passed away come August. So it's been hard dealing with that. I wish he was here, but sometimes these things are hard, but you gotta deal with them. And what else did I add, Mom?
Yeah, so him losing his father has also so we're trying to deal with an experience like this when he gets home, and then immediately after that, his father passed away. And so I guess I don't want to say that it overshadowed the experience, but I mean, the grief that he is going through and still goes through and everything, it's been hard. And it's also, you have these things that plague his nightmares. And so it's a little bit because I'm not there. I wasn't exactly there to help him to say, hey, I experienced this, like I seen it, it's gonna be okay. But we just are doing the best that we can day by day, and I guess that's really all that you can do. Um, but yes, it has been hard. So I guess another reason, if you can wonder why, we didn't come forward, or he didn't come forward before this with his experiences. Yeah, that was something that kind of overshadowed it at the time, was with the loss of him. And but we just start trying to, remain positive, and just, I really want to help him. I'm hoping that this show and being able to speak about it, and this is the first time that he's actually come out and fully told his story, other than to me and to you, that this is going to help him move forward, and that we can go camping again, and we can experience the finer things, without having the fear of it, because it has been hard. And you I know other people have experienced it, but one thing that has helped me is communicating with other people that have had experiences, knowing that he's not alone in this situation. Like, he's not the only one that's done this. Like, he's 100% not imagining it. That I can attest to. Like, I know that this is real, and that's a little bit unsettling to know too, that there's a reality to this, that a lot of people, I guess, unless you experience it or go through or have somebody that went through this experience, it's really hard to acknowledge these things, because who would want to acknowledge something like this, that these creatures are real and exist? I mean, I know that I didn't before this happened.
Well, the world's a much friendlier, safer place when dogmen don't exist, but as you know now, unfortunately they do.
Absolutely, they do, and whether we want them to be real or not, they absolutely are. And that's something that I feel is important that you're doing here, Vic, is you're doing something really special in this world by making people aware of it, because whether they're harming us or not, it's really important that people know that it is true. Because I mean, I can't imagine if it was me in this situation, coming across something that's 7 foot tall, that has razor sharp fangs with red eyes. Probably would have dropped dead right then and there. I think, I don't know, but I guess, I think it's a good thing that people know, and being aware of things can help you to, I don't know if it makes it easier. I don't know if anything, encountering a dog man would ever be easy, but I think that what you're doing is very important. And I think that people need to know the truth, because the reality is these creatures are real, and they do live, and it doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, you can come across them.
Yeah, isn't that the truth, unfortunately? And that's one of the biggest problems. That's one of the things that gives eyewitnesses so much trouble coming to terms with their experiences. The fact that ever since they learn how to comprehend the spoken word, it's hammered into their heads that things like this don't exist. So when they do have an encounter with one, that's one of the biggest reasons why they get so thrown for a loop, because they just can't wrap their minds around what they're looking at. So yeah, it's just great to have a platform where we can get this word out. The fact that these things are real, they're definitely out there, and that anyone could have a dogman encounter, unfortunately. And Jack, I'll tell you what, when they were passing out moms, you sure hit the lottery. Do you know that?
Yeah, I always tell her that she's the best mom in the world. She is to me.
Yeah, she's definitely a keeper. Sounds like your dad was too.
He was quite the guy.
Yeah, he sure sounds like it. Those canid prints that you found, how big would you say they were?
Well, if I had to estimate, I kind of put my hand up to them, and it was just about, if not bigger, as my hand. It was like wider than my hand, and it was about the size of my hand. So it was very large.
What his dad described it to me as, like, because he actually sent me a picture of one of the prints, like, and he said that they were, not only were they large, but he said they were deep. What was alarming about it, he said, I've never seen a print that went that deep, almost like like it had, I don't want to speculate, but like if it had tail ends or something that curved down, he said the prints went deep. He's like, I've seen big prints before. I've seen moose, I've seen whatever, but not only was the print extremely large, but what was alarming about it was how deep the print was. Almost like something had pressed deeply, like whether it be tail ends, claws, or whatever. It had made an imprint, a couple inches into the earth. And it's like, I've never known anything like that, maybe to make a print like that before. Even bears, I've seen bear prints before. I've been in the UP, and I've, been in the most remote areas of the UP and so forth. And even so, they don't go that deep. There's still, you can still tell what a bear print is, but there also aren't bears in the specific area of the region of North Dakota that we were actually located in. But it was definitely not a print that I had ever recognized before. And I've seen a lot of different prints and creatures. I've gone hunting. I've seen a lot of different things before, and it was not one that I had recognized. And not only that, but I would say that it was at least 2 handprints of a large person's hand wide. And it was a very deep print. And it was a little unsettling, to say the least.
Oh, I'm sure it was. And if those prints were that big, then that precludes the chance that it could have been left by a normal canid, because the biggest canid prints that have ever been found by a timber wolf were 6 inches long by 5 inches wide. Of course, a wolf, any wild canid, is going to have more of an elongated print versus a dog's print is going to tend to be more round. But yeah, that biggest print that's ever been found, again, it was only 6 inches long and 5 inches wide. What you're describing is quite a bit bigger than that. So that really narrows down what it could have been, what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And then going back to the remains that were found, like that, and I'm a cat person, so this is a little hard for me to talk about, but when I spoke to his dad, he had called me, like I said, and like, other than the fear and panic in his voice, he said, like, just like, I think Jack did a good job describing it, but when something is like being hurt or being attacked, like that screeching noise that an animal can let off, like, well, hearing that, and then after the situation happened, like, it was very unsettling. Like, they couldn't even identify what was left of whatever. There was just some small remains, let's just say, like fur, maybe something. I don't want to get too grotesque, like some intestines, and it was kind of scattered. And it's like, yeah, it's just a little unsettling to think about, I guess.
Yeah, that is unsettling. Kay, I can only imagine being as far from him as you were when he started having these encounters. That had to be so frustrating and difficult to deal with. How did you deal with that?
So I actually was so close that, like, I actually tried to jump on a plane. I actually was like, oh, I'm done with this. You're coming home. And actually something, I don't know if you remember back to, was it July or August that you came back?
I came on the July.
Okay, so back in July, like right when he was supposed to, so what had happened was I was supposed to drive him to North Dakota, and he was supposed to fly home on the unaccompanied minor thing where you pay for a plane ticket for them to be unaccompanied, and then they can fly by themselves. And so that day came and gone, and what had happened was, I don't know if everybody remembers this happening, but there was some sort of biohack in Texas or something that shut Delta Airlines down for like 2 days. They had no flights at all. Like, actually it was probably like closer to 5 days. And I had actually gone to war with the airline over it, but I couldn't get a flight there and he couldn't get a flight back. So I felt very helpless because I was a half a country away. and I couldn't do anything about it. There was actually like they delayed his flight like 3 or 4 times before he was actually able to even return back home. But like I couldn't get a plane ride there, and there was no and it's a very desolate, remote area, so there's not a lot of flights. Like there's only like 1 or 2 airlines that I think flies into this airport in North Dakota.
We flew out of it was Bismarck Airport.
Yeah, it was Bismarck, and there's only about 2 airlines, major airlines that fly there. It's not like you can get a Spirit Airlines there. They don't even go there. So you really only have the option of their airlines that you have to go there. So I really, as much as I wanted to go there, I was ready to get in my car and start driving another 24 hours there, but somehow I didn't. So we made it through. But it was very tempting, especially after hearing about what happened. All you want to do is protect your loved ones and your child. And yeah, it was really hard for me. I can honestly say that I was a wreck for a few days after I heard about this, and not being able to get there was a little, I was a wreck. I won't put it any other way. So I was not put together.
I'll bet you were a wreck. That'd be so hard to deal with. I can only imagine. When you and your dad had that first encounter, Jack, did you get the impression that it bolted behind that shack because of you two being there? Or do you think it might have done that for some other reason?
I think it obviously knew we were there, otherwise it wouldn't have shown itself. I do truly believe that it ran across from behind that shack into the brush and like the trees. I think it ran there. I think it was trying to give us fear and scare us away, because it was probably having a meal on the cats. It was probably having its dinner basically, and we interrupted it and it was not happy, so it wanted to scare us away. That's what I personally think.
Man, you're probably right. You're probably spot on. How about the second encounter when you were alone? How far did you have to run to get to your neighbor's house?
Well, basically, the house that my grandpa and my dad and me lived in, it was this small old farming house, and it was on this gravel driveway. And alongside, if you're facing the front of the house on the right side, there's this like a big like I don't want to say hedge, but it's like a bunch of trees lined up to where like you can't really squeeze through. But on the corner where the front and the side intersect of the hedge, it's cut open, like so someone could walk through, and it was a very used path, and it led into like a little ditch or whatever, and you could jump over. And so I walked out down the steps onto the gravel driveway, probably about, I want to say like maybe like 10 feet to the opening, and then as I just passed through the opening, I began hearing the cats howling or whatever sound it was. I can't really put it into words, but after I heard that, I began bolting like as fast as I could, and I probably ran from the opening to the back door of the neighbor's house, which everyone used. It was probably maybe like 25 to 30 feet, maybe a little longer, maybe a little less.
I'll bet that seemed like it must have been 200 yards or 2 miles.
It felt like I was running for like 20 minutes. It was a nightmare.
I feel like your heart was beating out of your chest.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I probably like would have just frozen if it was me. I probably would have just frozen and died right there. I don't know, out of fear. So I got to give you credit. For it.
One I watched a couple years back. The reason I didn't freeze at that moment, I watched a couple years back. It was some Dogman interview on a show. Some words the person said. They said if you freeze, you die. And I didn't know if the thing was trying to hurt me at the time or whatever, and I don't know where it was. So I just bolted. I knew if I freeze, I probably would be a goner. So I just ran, and I was so happy that when I saw my dad and the neighbor peek their face out the back door, and like they said, "Get in the house." He's like, "What is that, dude?" He said like this. He said, "Dude, what is that?" And I got in the back door, and I went up in the kitchen and watched out the window, like I said earlier. But it was very fearful, and I'm just glad that I made it safely. And yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did too. Thank goodness for that. Did you have any concerns for your dad and grandpa's safety, though, when they headed out to look for the dog man?
Very much. I said, Dad, I don't want you going out there, something along those lines. I was very worried for him and my grandpa. I knew my grandpa had a very large gun, but I was still very worried about them. Even if you have a gun, you would still get hurt or possibly killed if you really make it angry. So I was worried about him, but he insisted and he went to check it out. And then I called my grandpa because my grandpa still had no idea. He was playing, I think he was playing Yahtzee with his friend. I was playing with them before I actually left the house. But yeah, so I called my grandpa. He got his gun. I was very worried for their safety, but they were okay, luckily. So yeah, I was worried though.
Oh, I bet you were. He was rattled by his encounters, obviously, but how did your husband seem to handle his encounters after all the dust settled from each one, Kay? Uh-oh, can you hear me?
Hear me?
Okay, now I can. Did you
Okay,
hear that
so
question?
yes, I did. So I would honestly say one thing I can say about him is he was always kind of a fearless person. Like I'd never really seen him afraid of too many things. Um so like after it happened and like for him to actually call me and tell me that he was scared, like that scared me. And and after that I think I want to say that it definitely affected his mental health. Um, I don't think he let on because you don't want to let on how much, something you don't want to show fear to your kids and, you don't want them to know really what you're going through. And that's your job as a parent is to try to, be the strong one and to not show fear and this and that. But like he let on to me how much it affected him and how much it scared him. And I think that I know that he had trouble sleeping at night. Like I know that Jack has trouble sleeping at night. Um, I know that he was afraid to go outside alone after that, like without a weapon. But I mean, I think it affected him a little bit more than he tried to let on. Because for him to be so unsettled because he wouldn't want me to be afraid of, the well-being of our son at the time. Um, and for him to let on that there was a security threat or any sort of threat had to have been a real bothersome situation for him to tell me because otherwise he wouldn't have. Half the time they do things they don't want to tell me about it or whatever. Like we're gonna go, I wasn't exactly sure about Jack going on and shooting off guns and this young of age and this and that. And he's like, well, I got him, a shotgun and we're gonna go and do this. And he didn't want to let me know about it, and I'm like, well, I'm not really sure about that and so forth. But, for the most part, he didn't really want to tell me when they were doing things and so forth, especially anything that would be remotely considered dangerous. But for him to let on that he was scared and for what he's seen, it absolutely, I know, affected him mentally. And I know that he had a hard time sleeping. I know after that he was plagued with some nightmares. I know that to be a fact.
Oh, I'm sure he was. That doesn't come as a surprise either. Your mom told us about how you used to love to ride your dirt bike in the woods before you had these experiences, but present day, I know you're not doing it right now, but do you see a time down the road when you're going to be able to do that again?
Well, right now, kind of live in like a suburb area, and it was actually my cousin's that was out there, and I was only able to use it for the time being. But I did own previous ones here in Michigan when my dad lived like kind of towards in the countryside. But I am looking to buying a dirt bike or four-wheeler sometime in the future, and I will take it on a trail. Probably not that remote, but somewhere, where I could still ride, but be closer to.
Uh-oh, we lost you. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Okay, now I hear you.
Yeah, we actually talked about taking a trip up to the UP and either going on a snow, like we used to go snowmobiling and so forth, or dirt bikes, four-wheelers and so forth. And that was something that he was like, "Are you sure, Mom? Like that is probably a good area where, they reside." And we also hit a deer in our it was actually my mom's brand new car. She had it for less than a month, like on the way to North Dakota. We actually went from Michigan to North Dakota, and we drove and we went through the Upper Peninsula. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but that's about as remote and desolate as you can get. There is nothing but pretty much woods up there. And yeah, well, right after we crossed over the Mackinac Bridge, we actually are. It was on the 4th of July a year ago today. It's kind of weird. It's the anniversary of it that we're speaking of it, but we were driving, and it was a very foggy night. And it was, yeah, about 1:30 in the morning on a holiday, and we actually we got our GPS signal died out, and we were in the middle of nowhere. And so like I ended up on this dirt road, and I mean, we're talking like if you were ever driving on it, you have to picture it from a horror scene. It was foggy, like so you could only see about an inch in front of your face, and there's woods just on like and there's and the grass isn't cut. And so I'm looking and I'm looking, and there was a deer, and it jumped out in front of me, and we hit it in my mom's brand new car that she had for less than a month actually. And after we hit this was on our way to North Dakota before this experience happened. And I had my 5-year-old and my Jack in the car and my mom, and I got out of the car and I'm like, please God, please let it still run, please let it still run, because I knew, being where I was, I said, oh my goodness, like we can't get a tow company here. It's a holiday for one. We have no cell phone service. And pretty much I knew that when you have roadkill, also when you have a dead deer on the side of the road, it also draws other creatures, to where you are. So I was actually fearful at that point in time. Before we even got there, I'm like, okay, this is going to attract bigger predators. So we were lucky to get out of that situation. But going back to your question about like the trip to the UP and so forth, it's like, well, after this experience happened, Jack was like, I'm not really sure that we should go there, Mom. I'm not really sure. Like, so he has like, it has been, I don't even think he fully acknowledges it, but it's subconsciously there, his fear over it. Like, I'll ask him to go get an extension cord out of the garage or something in the middle of the night, and he'll be like, oh no, like I don't want to go outside right now. And I know that wasn't like this before his experience happened.
Well, that's natural fallout. In time, I think that's going to get better. Also, the fact that he's so young, too. I mean, he's only got so many experiences in his life to fall back on. But I mean, that's not to say that people with quite a few years under their belts don't have a lot of struggles, too. But yeah, I think it's going to get better in time. It just takes time to wrap your mind around this, really. It's how it normally goes. Well, I tell you what, let's ask some questions from the listeners in the live chat now. The first one is from Ian Consul, and Ian wants to know, did you believe in Dogmen before your experience? Well, at the top of the show, Jack told us about how he and his dad used to listen to the show, I think, since he was 6. So the answer to that is a resounding yes. And then the next question is from Christy. Christy wants to know, what was the scariest part of your encounters?
The scariest part of the encounters was probably not knowing if I was going to encounter it again if I was alone, or if it was going to come back when I was not expecting it, or if it was watching us. It was probably just not knowing where it resided and when it could appear. That was most likely it, I believe.
Yeah, that's one of those pick 'em type questions there. I'm sure there are so many things that were so frightening about those encounters that you can almost take your pick. And there's something I want you to never lose sight of here, Jack, and that is that thing, it outclassed you physically in so many ways. It's weapons of destruction. It had you so outclassed that way also that if it wanted to get you and your dad, it would have. You never could have gotten away from those things when you had your multiple encounters there. So the reason why you two got out of those encounters without a scratch is because of what it did or didn't want to do, not what you did. It wasn't a matter of you guys saving yourselves. You didn't do anything to save yourselves, not to say that you had that mindset that that's how it was. But I just want to make sure you understand that the reason why you weren't harmed has everything to do with the fact that the dogmen you encountered did not want to harm you. So, yeah, please try to keep that in mind. The next question is from Ann Consul, and she wants to know, could you tell if it was a girl or a boy?
From how fast I could, how fast it ran. I'm sorry, I could not tell. It was dark. It ran across the road within a split of a second. It could have been anything. There's no telling, but yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that.
Oh, sure. I mean, it all happened so fast, it sounds like that. Yeah, you're doing good to see any details at all. I'm impressed that you noticed what you did. So, yeah, you deserve credit for that. You really do. This next question is from Angel Wake, and she wants to know, Jack, now that you've encountered the dogman or dogmen, do you think you feel more equipped if you have another experience with one?
Oh, definitely. If I do go, I'm going to, but when I do go into the outdoors or the forest, no matter where, I will always bring at least uh, a pocket knife on me. At least I will not go into the woods without a little pack, at least of like a survival pack, or at least without any sort of small knife. But I will always go when I'm old enough to get my firearms license. I will go into the woods and I will bring a firearm with me. So I will always go equipped.
Well, you're not going to do any good trying to let the wind out of a dogman that you have an encounter with. So, yeah, you'd probably cause more harm than good if you tried to do that. And almost every gun you're going to take out there isn't going to get the job done when it comes to one of these things if it really needed to protect you. So, please keep that in mind also.
I think
But
it's just, sorry. I think it's just for more like it comforts me knowing I have it better would probably just help my mind be at ease.
yeah, that makes sense. As long as you don't allow that to cause you to do something that you don't have any business doing. I say, and I've said it for a long time now, if you carry a gun into dogman country and you do have a dogman encounter, you're actually more likely to be harmed or killed than if you don't have a gun in your hands or in your possession, because in a lot of cases, having that gun, it makes you think that, okay, well, I can use this gun to protect myself. It's almost foolproof. And in a lot of cases, if you shoot these guys, they've got a sense of vengeance like you wouldn't believe. So, I mean, a bluff charge that was just a bluff charge. It never intended to actually follow through. Well, if you shoot one of these things, and there's every possibility they will follow through. So, just something to keep in mind. This next question for you is from Bang Bang, and she wants to know, do you think you're being stalked?
Personally, I don't believe we were being stalked. I think it was just maybe the wrong place at the wrong time. But when we had that first encounter, I do think the dogman or whatever knew that we were there and it wanted to provoke a reaction and possibly just let us know that it was there. But I do not believe we were being stalked personally.
Yeah, I mean, if you were being stalked, I think they would have followed through a lot more than what they did. So, I think that answers that question pretty well. The next one up on deck is from Blood Viper, and he wants to know, did you sense them before you saw them?
Well, I've always grown up, and my dad has always told me if the woods or wilderness ever goes quiet, there's a large predator nearby. And it was kind of quiet, but I wasn't really paying attention to that because I knew me and my dad were having a conversation on our way back. But before I heard the cats howling and we actually saw the thing, I didn't really have a sense that anything was wrong other than it was kind of eerie out.
Yeah, I wondered about that. From the way you explained how everything panned out, it sounded like you didn't have any feeling that they're even around until you saw them. So that answers that. The next one up is from Christy. Christy wants to know, did it go quiet right before you saw it?
Like with the woods going quiet. Is that what you think?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of quiet because there wasn't really that much wildlife out there. There were like some patches of trees, but it mostly fields. It was already quiet, but I think it was like really quiet. The only thing I could hear was kind of my dad's voice, but it was pretty quiet. And then the cats started howling.
Huh, that's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes it gets quiet. Other times you have an encounter and the ambient noises don't drop off. So you never really know. There is no rhyme nor reason to that. This next one is from Scott Baker, and Scott wants to know, did the Dogman have a tail?
It was hard to see, but I do believe it did have a tail. It was on its hind legs. It moved so fast, I really couldn't have tell. But it did look like it had something behind it, kind of on its rear. I just couldn't tell. I do believe it did have a tail, though. It's not 100%.
Well, like I said, it moves so fast on both occasions, you're doing good to make out any details. So I think you did a good job noticing what you did. This next one up is from Blood Viper. He wants to know, did you smell anything from them?
Yes, there was a rank odor. I didn't smell it right before it appeared, but after it had ran through, I did smell it. And then the second night, I had also smelled it, but it was it's really hard to describe. It was like a skunk and like wet dog and kind of just like something rotting, and that was kind of a way to describe it. But yes, there was a smell from it.
That's another thing. Sometimes you smell a rancid odor, and other times eyewitnesses don't smell anything. So there's no rhyme nor reason to that either. This next one, the second to last question of the night, is from Angel Wake. It's a good question. She wants to know, when the Dogman ran, did it bob up and down or did it glide like on a skateboard?
It kind of like bobbed up and down, like it was like kind of like jumping or like running and jumping across. Like it moved very fast on its two legs. But yeah, it kind of bobbed up and down while it was running.
Yeah, unlike a Sasquatch, they normally don't just glide. They do tend to bob when they ambulate like that. I've got one more question for you, and this one is from Grave Dank, and they want to know, have there been any stories or reports in the town or surrounding area, of course, about dogmen?
Yeah. While I was there, I didn't really get a chance to ask anyone. Also, I was a little bit shaken up since it happened recently. And plus, the town has a very small population. It's about 75 people. But I didn't hear anything from any of the residents there. But after I'd left, I'd searched up online strange occurrences around the town, and it said there were some weird sightings a couple years back, but it didn't really say exactly what it was.
Oh, that's all right. It's hard to dig up info like that on any particular area, so I think you did a good job finding out what you did. Well, before we get out of here, I want to get closing comments from both of you one at a time. Jack, you please go first.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you asked?
Sure. Please give us any closing comments that you have. You go first, Jack.
Oh, okay. If you do happen to believe that you're gonna see a dogman, I'd just say that just keep calm and I don't know, I'm not good at speeches, I'm sorry. But have a good night and happy 4th of July.
Well, a lot of people aren't good at speeches, so it's not just you.
It's
No, I think
okay.
you're good.
I froze up in the beginning of it during my bio, so I apologize about that. But I thought I was good to go. So my comments here is, if you are a parent and you have a child or anybody that you know that has an experience like this, then please don't just dismiss it, because it really can affect them. And you need to also, whether you seen it with your own eyes or not, like, I think people can tell when people are telling the truth and are going through certain situations. So just don't, if you think that, oh, these things aren't real, and that's what I used to believe, it's just, keep an open mind to things, because you never know who in your life, whether it be your child or other people that may go through an experience like this. And just remember just to try to be as supportive as you can and try to be there for them, because it is a truly terrifying situation. And you never know what you would do when you were in it. So just try not to be judgmental of others as well.
That's all very well said. Very well said. It sure would be nice if more eyewitnesses had supporting people behind them in their lives like you. I'll tell you what, Kay, I'm awfully impressed. And Jack, I told you before several times, I'm so impressed by how you're handling all this. I mean, only being 13 years old, you deserve a lot of credit. You really do.
Thank you, Vic.
Oh, you're welcome. Just telling it like it is, though. But having said that, both of you, thanks so much for coming on, sharing the details of those experiences with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You are welcome. Well, having said that, thanks again so much for coming on, and have a great night.
You too.
You too.
Thanks. We'll see you. All right. That's another one in the books. Was that a shotgun? One of these yahoos is shooting off out here. Anyway, thanks again so much for listening, everybody. I really appreciate you listening on this challenging July 4th episode of the show. I really do. But before I get out of here, if you've had a Dogman encounter that you either need help dealing with, or maybe you want to come on the show and share your experience with the listeners, please go to dogmanencounters.com, submit a report, and if you do that, then I'll be happy to contact you to schedule a phone consultation. But having said that, thanks again so much for listening, and have a great night.